Welcome back to the Exalted Podcast, where we tell weekly stories of hope, health, and healing. I am really excited to have Banning Liebscher. Did I say that right? Is it Liebscher?
Not bad at all. Well done. Well done.
I honestly don't know how to say it, which I should, but sometimes you just don't pay attention until you're the one that has to say it. But he is the founder of Jesus Culture and the lead pastor at Jesus Culture Sacramento. He has been a pastor for 26 years, went on staff at Bethel Church when he was 19 years old. So that's just incredibly impressive. And I'm so excited to have you here today. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Always good. Always good to jump on and chat and talk. Glad to be here.
So Banning and I met a few weeks ago at the Sozo Summit, and he gave this talk on spiritual mothering and fathering that has put words to something that I knew that the Lord was doing in my heart for a really long time, but it gave me a clear vision for it. And so I'm just so excited to bring this story and just share his vision for it with all of you today. So just take me back to when the Lord started impressing upon you spiritual mothering and fathering and what that is.
Yeah, it probably started when I was in my own journey of getting fathered and mothered. 19 years old, and Chris Valentin comes into my life, and Danny Silk comes into my life, and Bill Johnson comes into my life. But I think that when we were doing youth ministry early on, the Lord just spoke very clearly to me that if you're going to mobilize a generation for revival, they have to be properly aligned underneath the older generation.
Yes.
So we just began to really clearly see that if we're really going to mobilize, equip, encourage, and ignite, inspire, every other word, a younger generation, one of the main mandates we have to do is connect them with fathers and mothers. And so I just think it became a value early on for us that this is really important, and that there's a natural independence in the Western world. There's a natural independence in America. We talk through this type of thing that, when I was growing up, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, when he was just like in his, parents just don't understand. And there was just this, this very kind of disconnected from just in the world, disconnected from fathers and mothers. And we said, we got to be countercultural. We actually have to be countercultural in the church. And so that's kind of been our heart. And then for me, in my own personal life, just seeing the fruit of it. I mean, just seeing the fruit of having fathers and mothers in my life that I submit to, that pour into me, that encourage me, that strengthen me, that challenge me. I mean, just having them in my life is like, and then I would say the other thing is I think when you read Paul in the New Testament, so much of his language is family language.
Right.
Paul is referencing the concept of family all the time.
Yeah.
Even when he's talking about, I'm praying you, I'm laboring.
Yes.
I mean, he's talking about giving birth. He's talking about my son. He's talking about no longer being children. Like, he's using all this language, it's family language. And I think just the understanding that I think the body of Christ is a family concept, and just the importance of fathers and mothers in that.
That's so good. It's so good. Now, you told the story when I heard you speak about the Lord speaking to you and just giving you a clear assignment to adopt a certain individual. Can you share that really quickly?
Yeah, well, so one of the things we really challenge people to do is to actually look around and say, who's the assignment you've given me?
Yeah.
So in the natural, we know, because I mean, you give birth to them or you adopt them from legally,
Right.
So I know who my physical children assignment are. There's 3 of them.
Yes.
But then God gives us spiritual children assignments.
Right.
Now, some of you that are listening, maybe you're not quite there in the father-mother realm. Maybe, you're 22, 23, whatever. But there's still people that the Lord will point out and say, I want you to pour into them. I want you to encourage them.
Yes.
So I just am constantly paying attention to that. It's happened a handful of times, but I was literally in a meeting once, and there's a young worship leader who, she's married now and actually is one of the a pretty big worship leader right now. But I was just in a meeting. She was leading worship, and the Lord just said, I want you to adopt her.
Yeah.
So I said, all right. So she's on my radar now.
Yeah.
That's a whole journey. But
Yeah.
there's a verse where Jesus is praying to the Father and says, so Jesus had 12, he had 70,
Yes.
but he had thousands of people that would gather around him.
Right.
When he went to the Father, he said this prayer. He said, Jesus, I haven't lost anyone you gave me, which was an
So good.
intriguing thing because Judas, a ton of people left him. I mean, people were leaving him all the time. Like
Right.
people were constantly leaving Jesus. But I said, I haven't lost anybody you gave me. And it's this like distinguishing thing where I really believe that the Lord actually says there's certain people that I'm going to give you, not like we
Yes.
own, you get my
Yeah.
point, right? But that are going to be an
Yeah.
assignment for you.
Yeah.
And I'm paying attention for that. I might be influencing a lot of people, but I'm paying attention for the ones that God's highlighting that
Yeah.
I am to really invest in. So this was one of them, and the Lord just said, "I want you to adopt her." So then that she's on my radar now.
Yeah.
She's
I
on my
love that.
radar.
So about 8 years ago, before I really was familiar with prophetic, because I wasn't raised in that environment, right? I had a friend who gave me what was a prophetic word. I didn't understand that's what it was at that time, but she said, like, you're going to adopt a teenager, but this is someone that's already in your life, and it's somebody that's already close to your family. And immediately I had someone drop into my heart, and I didn't understand because I knew that this person, even if something, God forbid, were to happen to her parents, her mom, I knew there was a long list of people in between before she would ever come to live at my home. So I only had the context for the natural, but I knew that the Lord had told me to pray for her, right? So over the years, as the Lord has been working in my life, I have prayed for her, I've interceded for her. And it wasn't until you shared that story that I finally understood like what my assignment was in her life, that she is a spiritual daughter. And she's somebody that comes to my house on the regular. She goes to youth group with my kids. And I hadn't realized that I was already walking in that assignment and how much more important it was. So it was such a great moment for me, and probably why I'm so excited about even pursuing this more now, because I've been asking the Lord since then. You talked about the three, the people that, Jesus was so close to and were invited into his home on the regular. And then there's the 12 and there's the 70. So I've just been asking the Lord for more names. Like, who is it, Lord?
Yeah.
Who is it?
I love that you're saying that. So what you reference right there for people listening or watching is that Jesus just didn't have 12 disciples. There was 70.
Right.
But but within the 12, there was 3. So we see him bringing them. He goes to the Mount of Transfiguration. He brings those 3 with him. He didn't bring the 12 with him. He brought the 3 with him. So there's these layers that Jesus has. And I think in our life, it should be similar. I should be able to say, now listen, we know our own natural family and our own natural kids, but we should say, who are those 3? And it doesn't necessarily have to be 3,
right?
But who are those 3? Who are the ones that that are way more intimately connected, have more access to your life?
Yes.
Like they went with Jesus into this moment of transfiguration. They were there with them. Right. They had a level of access to him that the others didn't. He brought them into a room when he went to pray.
Yes.
He put everybody else out of the room, but they stayed. And then there's the 12, and the 12 are with him, and he's sitting around campfires and they're talking. And then there's the 70, and then there's the masses. And I do think we need to be saying, God, who in those layers, who are those people? I think sometimes we get so busy and we get so, and I say this not harshly, self-centered.
Sure.
We get so busy, we get so self-centered, we're just trying to make it, that we haven't actually stopped. And listen, that girl that you're mentioning, I'm going to say this, and probably one of the most satisfying and fulfilling things you've done with your life.
Yeah.
Is just to pour into this girl, encourage her, believe in her. Yep. And so I feel like there's so many believers that are missing out on so much fulfillment and joy because they're too busy to stop and say, God, who are the people that you've put in my life that I'm supposed to pour into, that I'm supposed to give access to, that I'm supposed to do that? So I love that you did that. And I love that it got language all of a sudden,
Yeah, I got like a context for what the very first prophetic word I ever got, at least that I know of, like came full circle for me in that moment. So that was really fun for me. But let's go back. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, how do I start doing this? How do I build trust? Like, what's your advice for them?
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit. Lots of times when I say, so I'd say this: discipleship looks more like a family than it does a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really important to understand that much of what we're talking about, you've been a spiritual mom, but you've been a discipler. You're discipling.
Right.
So we're all called to be discipling people, but discipleship is a family concept more than it's a classroom concept.
So good.
It looks more like fathering and mothering than it does professoring.
Yes.
Being a professor. So first step into that thing. We're all called to be fathers and mothers.
Yes.
But the second thing then is many times we have this concept that we don't know where to start because we think that adopting somebody spiritually is now I need to come and give you all the wisdom that I've learned. I need to come and help you direct your life. I need to come and tell you what to do. And we have this very kind of like controlling concept.
Right.
Or I need to know everything and give you all this input and wisdom, and I need to direct your life. But that's not even really parenting, to be honest with you.
Right.
So one of the things I just encourage people is this. The first thing you got to do is just pray. Just ask the Lord, who is in my midst? Now for you go, oh, that's what I've already been doing. Now I have some context for it. But others are like, Lord, who isn't in my midst? And the Lord will speak to you about that stuff. Then the next step is this. You just have to encourage them and pray for them. And one of the things I try to tell people, even when it comes to discipleship, I'm like, the first step of discipleship, the first step of spiritual fathering and mothering is not breaking into their life and giving them direction and wisdom.
Right.
The first step is just be the biggest encouragement in their life and pray for them.
Right.
And I think that because this is what I say, you need, so for you, for example, I would need permission to speak into your life. You would personally, I mean, we don't know each other real well.
Right.
And you would have to say, Banning, I would like some input.
Yeah.
Banning, what do you think about this?
Right.
Banning, would you speak into this? You have to invite me in.
Right.
So I can't speak into your life without you inviting me in. If I do, it's called control. So I can't speak into your life. But what I don't need your permission to do is encourage you and pray for you.
That's so good.
So one of the things for me is when the Lord tells me I'm supposed to adopt somebody, well, I don't need their permission to do that. I don't need their permission to adopt them because the only thing I'm going to do right now is be your biggest encourager and pray for you. Like legitimately pray for you and be your biggest encourager. So when I see you, I'm going to be speaking life to you. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to send you some text. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to give to you. If I hear about a need, I'm going to try to meet it. If I hear about you going on a missions trip, I'm the first one that's going to do it. And I'm going to move towards you with that. I mean, guys, even here's parenting. Like I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. My youngest is a 17-year-old junior. He plays basketball. You know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to show up to his game and I'm going to be the biggest fan in that place. Yeah. I'm going to show up to his basketball game tonight and I will be the biggest fan in that place.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not there to give him all the wisdom I have and tell him what he should do with his life. I'm just going to be the biggest encouragement he has. And we're going to be wearing, we show up to games with T-shirts and all that stuff. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I know that I'm rambling a little bit here, but this is the first step for everybody.
Yeah. And it's such an important step.
Just encourage people, pray for people, give to people. Like, and just if the Lord's put somebody on your radar, do that. Yeah. And one of the things I realize is I have never met anybody that wants to encourage me, pray for me, and give to me that I don't want to be around more.
Yeah, true.
There's nobody that when I get around them, I'm like, I'm so encouraged every time I'm around them. They pray for me all the time, and they're constantly giving to me. if you have that going on in your life with me, I'm like, can I hang out with you more?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the first step. That's the first
So
step.
good.
Now, eventually, people begin to open up their lives. They begin to invite you in. There's many people like this girl that I felt the Lord called me to adopt. I just full on. That's what we do, man. I'm just now in. I'm an encourager. I'm going to give. I'm going to be praying for you. But now I'm in their life a lot more and giving input
Right.
and helping them out and giving some direction and giving some wisdom. But that's not how it started. And quite frankly, if I never got to that point, it's still so rewarding. If
Right.
I never sit and am able to give you all my wisdom I have and help give you direction, I'm okay just being an encouragement in your life. Like
Right.
I find great reward in that.
Yeah. People need that.
So,
They
so
need
much.
it.
Listen, I'm convinced that people actually need what they need most is courage. And so
Mm.
I would tell you this. I actually felt like the Lord told me that there are going to be people whose main ministry is the ministry of encouragement.
Mm.
And what they do, and some people, when I tell this to them, they go, that is me, but I kind of didn't put a value on it. It didn't feel important.
Yeah.
But some of you listening, God's actually called you to be an encourager, which means you're going to put courage in, you're going to encourage, you're going to put courage in people.
So
And I
good.
would say most people, most Christians don't need more teaching. They need courage to do what God's called them to do.
That's good.
So whether that is a married couple who's struggling with their marriage,
Mm-hmm.
they need courage.
Yeah.
They're discouraged. Whether it's a young man that's fighting for purity,
Yeah.
he needs courage. Whether that's somebody believing God for a business they're starting, whether it's whatever else it is, what
Yeah.
people are lacking is courage. And what the enemy does is discourages us.
Yes, he does.
He disarms us of our courage. He discourages us. So I'm like, if the enemy discourages you, then I want God to use me to encourage you. And some
So
of you
good.
listening right now, that's going to be your main thing. And I think that is at the core of what a good father or mother is.
That's really good.
Is
You know
I'm
what I
going to
keep
put
seeing
courage
as you're
inside of you.
talking? I keep seeing the picture of like, rather than just trying to pour all we know into somebody, like I might be in the driver's seat, but like I think about my teenager. I have a 14-year-old right now,
Yeah.
right? So I'm
There
like
you go. God bless you.
savoring this time because I have
Yes.
very little time until he's driving and we get so much quality
Yes.
time in the car. And
Yeah.
that just kind of creates the space for him to talk. And
Yes.
like
Yes.
just by being there, like being that encourager, that's
Yes.
what I keep seeing as you're saying this is just coming alongside somebody and just creating the space to be in their life. So just
yes.
driving your teenager around is
that's
just the metaphor for that, right?
absolutely. And that's why the 3, when we say 3, 12, 70, you can only have a handful of people in that mode.
Yeah.
Because you actually have to give them actual access and time.
Yeah.
Like this is fathering and mothering takes time. And what you're describing too, it's interesting. Ron Luce wrote a book called Reset, and it's just talking about raising teenagers in today's culture. But he talks about that there are windows that open up with teenagers.
Yeah.
And when they open, you got to take advantage of it because they don't always open.
Yes.
So
You have to
he
engage.
says, yes. And so he would say, I try to if I go to the store, I always take one of my kids with me because it's like, I don't know when that window's going to open.
Yeah. That's so good.
And so I'm saying this is a similar thing just in life is there has to be actual time spent because discipleship or fathering and mothering is not done on a clock. It's not like, hey, we're going to go to Starbucks and from this time to this time, you're going to open up and you're going to like that may happen down the road and there may be some maturity around that. But for the most part, sometimes it's conversations that happen. It's moments together. It's something that comes. And that's why you honestly can't father and mother a ton of people or disciple a ton of people.
Yeah.
Because it really does take some of that time.
And that context makes so much sense. Like they're the 3, just like Jesus had the 3 that get so much access. They're in your life. They're in your home. the 12 that maybe get a little
Yes.
bit more, but you're intentional about it. And then the 70 is just
Yes.
people that the Lord's put on your heart to just pour into, just encourage. I love
Yes.
that. That metaphor also took a lot of pressure off of me, thinking I got to go mentor everyone I know, right? Because I don't do things halfway. And sometimes I get ahead of the Lord. So it was a great context to just sit down and like, okay, Lord, who's in these columns? Not that it has to be exactly 3 or exactly 12 or exactly 70, just who's in these kind of spaces. So that was just
and one of the things to free people up who feel like they should be discipling more than 1 or 2 people or whatever else. I would say this. When Paul writes, you have many teachers, but not many fathers. People have used that verse as like a rebuke. There's not enough fathers, but that verse is actually not talking about there's not enough fathers. Paul's trying to emphasize the fact that he has a place of authority in this person's life. And he says, you have many teachers, but you don't have many fathers. And he says, so his point was, I'm one of those fathers.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm one of those fathers. So listen to me. And what that's done for me is this. Paul is saying, oh, you can have a lot of teachers, or you can teach a lot of people, but there's only a handful you can really be in relationship with at a deeper level.
Yeah.
That's what Paul's saying. Paul's saying you can only be in relationship at that level that you're with me with only a few, but I am one of them. And I think that people do need to recognize that no, I mean, some people have more capacity and they're built, God's built them with more capacity. Yeah. But for the most part, most of us, and that's okay. And Paul says you only have a few, and that's okay, because that's how we're built. So people absolutely need to be freed up from, you may say, hey, I've got 1 or 2 people that I do this with. I'm like, good for you. Good for you. Awesome. Then go make a difference in their life and let them go reproduce that somewhere with people.
So what about the person who not only wants to mentor people, but is looking for a spiritual mother and father? What advice would you give there?
Yeah. Ultimately, I think in a perfect scenario, fathers and mothers would come find, sons and daughters. But I've just always been, I've always been of the mindset that I'm going to go pursue it. Yeah. So the Lord I'd say, and there's many people I've pursued that didn't go anywhere. I'd say, hey, can we go to lunch? It just didn't go anywhere. But there's many that I pursued that have gone somewhere, that have become spiritual fathers in my life or mothers in my life. Yeah. And you have to be okay. You can't. Part of the problem, I think, is we believe that unless you come to me, you don't value me.
Sure.
So there's this thing that if I come to you and say, can we go to coffee? Yeah. That it's not as valuable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, I absolutely don't mind coming and saying, can we go to coffee?
Yeah.
The other thing for me that I've done is I make sure that I'm a worthwhile investment. And what I mean by that is the people that drain me are the people that meet with me and walk away and do nothing with what I gave them.
Yeah.
So I might sit in an office, I might help give them some advice, some input, and they go off and do whatever they want to do. But the people that I sit with that go away and do something with what I invested in them and come back and go, look at all this fruit I have from what you invested in me. I want to meet with them more.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, so for me, I say, okay, if I'm going to meet with somebody, if I'm going to go pursue a father or a mother, I'm going to sit down with them. I'm not there just to do my own. I'm not there to kind of have you give me some input and then me go do my own thing. Right. Whatever you invest in me, I am going to go do something with. So I very much believe that I very much believe that I'm the best soil you could invest in. I am the best soil you could invest in.
That's good.
But I don't believe that because I think I'm amazing. I believe that because I'm going to do something with what you gave me.
Yeah. And valuing.
So if you pour into me about my marriage, if you pour into me about my personal life, if you pour into me about my ministry, I'm going to take that and I'm going to do something with it. I'm going to act and move and steward the things that you've given me. So I think for us, moving towards fathers and mothers, and then when you receive what they have, go do something with it. Sometimes you'll move towards fathers and mothers and it won't go anywhere, and you honestly have to go, that's okay, I'm going to keep moving towards fathers and mothers. The other thing I'd say is this: we need to be careful that we're not looking to fathers and mothers what only God can give us. Sometimes we are looking to people for something that only God can give us, and that gets kind of wonky as well. When I'm looking for you to meet a need that you can't actually meet.
Yeah.
I want you to meet a need in my life that God's like, I'm the one that's going to meet that need.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it gets wonky when we're going to people wanting them to meet a need that only God can meet. But if I were you and you need fathers and mothers, ask the Lord, who's in my community? And then go up to him and say, can we do lunch?
Yeah.
And I'd love just to get lunch with you.
That's so good.
And sit and listen.
It's so good. What's one thing you do within Jesus Culture to just continue to foster this lifestyle? Like, this is a culture within your church, and you just continue to pour into it. So what's one thing you guys do to continue to just keep that culture alive?
Yeah, we preach on it. I preach on it a lot. We preach messages that are all around this thing. We also very much value the older generation, which I don't know when the 40 and up or whatever else, 50s, 60s, 70s. There's a real message in our environment that what they're carrying, we need. And so I am constantly just sending the message that we need what is being carried by those that are older, and we need that poured into the younger.
Yeah, that's so good.
And so for us, it's probably just constantly speaking the message. The other thing, I mean, there's some underlying philosophical issues in church as well around really challenging people to take personal responsibility for their call.
Yeah.
So what you're describing, when I don't need somebody to bring me someone. Sometimes we're sitting there going, well, I'll disciple somebody if you build a program that I can join, and that you just connect me. You connect me up with somebody who needs to be discipled.
Yeah, like the church has to organize it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And I'm like, I don't need you to bring me anybody to disciple. I can pray and ask the Lord who I'm supposed to start pouring into, and then I can move towards them.
Right.
So I think as well, there's a real sense of personal responsibility that has to come into the lives of believers. I mean, there was in Tennessee, there's a foster agency that started, and it kind of started off this vision where they had heard a statistic where there was more foster kids on a waiting list than there were foster parents available. And they said, what if we shifted that? What if there were more foster parents available than there were foster kids waiting?
Yeah.
So they went to work on that. I think they've actually accomplished it. They went to work on that. And what I realized is what if our churches looked like that? What if there were more fathers and mothers in our church who were taking personal responsibility for the call on their life to father and mother, and they were just looking for sons and daughters to pour into?
Yeah.
And it was almost like there were more fathers and mothers than there were sons and daughters needing to be fathered and mothered. Like that kind of vision. I think the problem is right now is there's more people that need to be fathered and mothered than there are fathers and mothers who are taking responsibility to father and mother.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to shift that thing, but that's that personal responsibility thing that just says no. And just start in church, right? We show up in church, and I'm just looking, Lord, who is it?
Yeah, that's
good. Is there anybody here that I'm supposed to start pouring into?
That's so good.
And then it might be as simple as every time I'm at church, I invite them to sit with me. I take them to lunch every week after. There might be some poor college student in your church, and you just say, hey, what are you doing? Come on, let's go to lunch after church. I want to take you to lunch. Let's go to lunch. It may just be that. It may be that simple. But I mean, I can imagine, let's say you have a church of 100. I mean, can you imagine if 55 of them just showed up to Sunday and we're just looking at the other 45 saying, I was praying for you this week. Let's go to lunch today. I gotta come on, I'm gonna take you to lunch today.
So
How's your
good.
marriage? Can you imagine that? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be the most beautiful thing.
It would be the most beautiful thing. That would be absolutely incredible. And I love that you spoke to, let's just have people take personal responsibility, because I think, at least where I live in the Midwest, we think that only the person leading the church or leading a ministry has an assignment from the Lord on their life. And that's just not true.
Gosh.
Like, we all have assignments just within our everyday life that have nothing to do with our occupation, but the Lord has assigned them to us. And so I love that you just don't have like a structured program within your church, that you just anoint people to do that. Because the church doesn't need to be leading all this. The church really should be everywhere, not just the building.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You work in a factory, you should be discipling people. Discipling and fathering and mothering, I'm kind of interchanging.
Yes.
You work in a factory, you should be discipling people. You're a CEO in a corner office, you should be discipling people. You drive Uber, you should be discipling people.
Yes.
You preach for a living, you should be it's just, And I'll tell you this, the people I disciple, I'm not discipling them because I'm a pastor.
Right.
I'm discipling them because I'm a follower of Jesus.
Yes.
And he says, go find some people and pour into them. Yeah. So it has nothing to literally my call to disciple has nothing to do with my occupation as a pastor. Nothing.
Right. And you can even do this in the secular world. Like, even if you don't work for a faith-based organization, invest in people.
Yeah. So I agree. Good. I agree.
So good. Man, that's why I just am obsessed with this message. So any final thoughts for the people listening?
Yeah. Fathering and mothering spiritually, discipling is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. Yeah. It's very much like parenting in the natural. Parenting in the natural it's late nights, it's sleepless, it costs a lot of money. It's even my kids are all old now. They're 23, 20, and 17. They all live at home. So I'm now just Uber Eats. Literally every time I'm coming home, they're like, "Go get me food." And so I'm just Uber. I'm a 46-year-old Uber Eats driver, and but as much of a sacrifice it is, as difficult as it can be, it's hands down the most rewarding, fulfilling, satisfying thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage people is this: the greatest thing you'll ever do with your life is invest it in somebody else. The greatest thing you'll ever do with your life is invest it in the lives of others. And so just start that journey. If you're doing it right now, I want to encourage you, keep it up. If you look around and go, I don't think I'm pouring into anybody. I actually don't think there's anybody that I'm intentionally and deliberately pointing my life towards. Start doing it. And then for those that are like, I just feel intimidated by it, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to give them advice about their marriage. I'm trying to figure my own life out. I'd be like, that's fine. You don't have to give them all your wisdom. Encourage them, pray for them, give to them.
Yeah.
Believe in them.
Yeah.
Champion them.
Give them someone to listen to, that listens to them. I think that has so much value too, right?
No, 100%. There's so much. When people are like, I don't know what to do, I don't even know how to start. It feels awkward. Hey, can I be your spiritual father? That's awkward. You don't just start conversations out like that. Hey, I was praying for you, and I feel like I'm supposed to be your spiritual father, and you're supposed to be my spiritual son. That's not even how it starts. That's just not how it works.
Right.
How it works is, I'm going to begin just to be a massive encouragement to you.
Yeah, that's so
good.
And
that's where we're going to go. So just do it. Go do it. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, so good. Okay, if somebody wants to find you or find more of your content, because I know you've spoken about this before, where can they find you?
Well, JesusCulture.com and JesusCulture.tv. But JesusCulture.com, JesusCulture.tv would have all that. And then just my Instagram, The Banning.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today and just for continuing to share this really important message. It has just, it's lit a fire inside of me that I didn't know was just a tiny little flame. So I just appreciate you so much. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time.